I'm Elisa and I am the Scrappy Wife behind scrappywife.com, and today I have an art journal process for you, and I'm going to be using some new to me products from Arteza. They reached out to me maybe like a month or so ago to see if I would like to check out some of their products and review them for my art journaling and my Bible journaling, and I said sure, I would love to, and so I just wanted to share the products that I'm going to be using today. I have never used gouache colors before. This is their 60-piece set of gouache colors, and I am not a trained artist. I never took art classes or anything, and so I wasn't really aware of all of the different kinds of paints. And I primarily work with acrylics and watercolors, but these gouache colors are ones that kind of work like watercolor in that they react with water, and you can make them a little bit more translucent, but primarily they're meant to be a bit more opaque. And so I wanted to try these and see how I like them, how they worked out. The 60 colors are amazing. There's a huge variety, including some metallic and pearl colors that I will share with you in just a second. And I had a good time. It's going to take me a little while to get used to the texture and consistency of these paints, and I'll share more about that in my video, but I'm really enjoying using them in all of the colors. In fact, let me just share with you. I swatched out the colors when I got it to kind of see what they were like, and check out that huge array of colors. It is so fun. Now, you can of course mix colors to make, you don't need all 60 colors, but for me, it saves time just having the colors pre-mixed, ready to go. There are some metallics like this gold, there's silver, and then the pearls are beautiful. They have a shine to them. Pearl eucalyptus. Up here, here's another metallic with the bronze, pearl bubblegum. Lots of different finishes within that 60 colors, which I think is fun and interesting to play with. And I just love the variety in colors. They go on really smooth. You can see each time I swatched, I did like a thinner coat right here using lots of water, and then went back and added a thicker one so I could see what it would look like, how translucent you could get it. And I'm super excited. I also tested these in my illustrating Bible, and they did not bleed through. There was a tiny bit of shadowing, but not bleed through. So I'm excited to try these in my Bible as well. Speaking of this book, they sent me these two books. These are their watercolor books. They're cold pressed, dual-sided, natural linen bound, and I have never actually used a real watercolor book. So I was excited. The size is a little bit intimidating to me because it's so large, and the art journal that I was working in before is much smaller, the Jane Davenport smaller art journal, but I'm excited to try this new size and see what I can do, what kind of challenges and what opportunities it provides. And then something else that they sent me that I'm going to use in this video are these water brush pens. And I have used water brush pens forever. I love water brush pens. And what you do is, for these, you simply unscrew right here, and then you fill this part with water right here. And when you screw it back in, the water is activated through this part that says push. These are nylon brushes here on the end, and you dip it in the paint, get a little bit wet. Works great with watercolors. They do work with those gouache paints because, like I said, those can be mixed with water and made a bit more translucent. But I like these because you can control the water flow. You can control the amount that is coming out. Plus, their package comes in a lot of different sizes that I wasn't able to find in other brands. Like, look at that big, thick one. I think that's fantastic. Most of the other water brushes I have are much, much smaller. I liked the variety that was available. It's a little bit hard to get it back in the cap without messing up the brush tip. I like the nylon brush. It's a little bit more predictable instead of a full-on watercolor brush, which holds a lot of water. The nylon works a little bit better with this because you can control it a little bit more. You have this one right here. This is a little stiffer. I'm anxious to try some more of these, and I really liked the small detail one right here. So super excited to try these in the video and to show you what I came up with trying these for the first time. And I will put you on fast forward and we will get going. Okay, the palette I'm using is actually a deviled egg holder, but I think it works great, especially because now I have all of these colors to choose from with these new paints, and so I can hold a lot in here. I'm squeezing some of the paint in each part, then gonna grab these new brushes, open them up, and use that wide tip brush to add a little bit of water, just a tiny bit, and I'm going to put these colors randomly across the page, just big, bold brush strokes of these different colors. There's some different finishes that I used, and I think it's cool how they're gonna mix and overlap and make some cool, just as the base, as the start of my art journal page here. These gouache colors are really interesting. So let me show you here. This is how you clean off the brush. You just squeeze a little bit of extra water, use a paper towel, and you clean off the brush, and you can try a new color, which is why these water brush pens are fantastic if you are working on the go, because you don't need your cup of water right there to use watercolors or any type of paints. The water is built in and it makes it easy to travel and do art on the go. These gouache paints are really interesting. It is kind of a mix between acrylic and watercolor. I've never worked with them before. I've never even heard of them before. Arteza reached out and I thought they were super interesting. I've been watching some different YouTube tutorials, and from what I hear, it's best to work in thin layers and build up from there, because you can always add more, but it's harder to thin it out after it has dried. So that's what I tried to go with here, and I'm just putting this in super fast forward. You'll see me mixing all the colors, and I chose kind of a fun bright color scheme for the summer here, and I'm just gonna fill in all the white space. This book is awesome. It takes the paint really well. It didn't wrinkle or anything like that, just like you wouldn't expect watercolor to do. The only issue that I had with this book is I had trouble getting it to lay flat, to stay open on the pages, and I kind of think it's because it's new. I was working with it a little bit, kind of working in the binding some and opening it. I think as I work through it more and the pages start to get some more paint, that's not going to be an issue, but I did have that issue kind of right out of the box. This huge spread was, oh my goodness, it was crazy. I didn't anticipate how much longer it would take me to work on such a big spread. This is easily probably twice as big, if not a little bit more than twice as big as I normally go on my art journal pages. So it took me a good while to fill up this page. It was fun though. I got to use, you'll see in a little bit, I got to use a stencil that I haven't gotten to use on my smaller art journal spreads, and got to try some different things that I wouldn't normally do on a smaller spread. So I do like this as an alternative. Not sure if I will work in this big book all of the time, but I like the challenge and I like getting to try some different things. Again, I'm still putting this paint all around, filling in all the spots, trying to make sure the colors aren't touching the same colors over and over again, filling in all the holes. And this is forming the basis of my page, and I'm gonna add some different layers on top of this. The layering is something that is super fun with these gouache paints. They layer really well once they're dry. You just have to make sure that the colors will work and that they don't get too muddy, especially if you're trying to mix and not layer. Now that I've completely covered up all of the white, I'm gonna come in and do some splatters. And this is fun to do with those water brushes because all I had to do was press out a little bit more water into that egg dish over there that I'm using as my palette, and it waters down the gouache, and I'm able to easily splatter the different colors across the page. And I went with that green and blue, and then I'm going to try some metallic as well, and I'm going to just use some different techniques to add some texture. I know this looks like a colorful hot mess right now, but I have a plan, and a lot of this color is going to end up getting covered up or toned down. So right now I'm just having fun playing and splattering and getting messy, and it's a lot of fun. I highly recommend trying a page like this where you're just throwing everything at the page, get out of your comfort zone, get messy, because it's fun to play with new supplies. All right, and make sure that all of those splatters are pretty dry because I'm going to come in with a dry brush technique. Now, I'm going to use the same gouache paints and just a completely dry brush, so I'm not mixing in any water. And if you've watched my channel for any amount of time, you know that I cannot resist a good metallic, and I love metallics and shines on my projects. So here I have the gold metallic, and I'm using a very dry brush and just giving those brush strokes across my page. Again, it's adding some more texture, some more interest. A lot of it's going to end up being covered up, but I think it's interesting, and I like the different finishes and the mix of the different finishes I'm trying to show you. You see the pearlescent against the flat finishes of some of those gouaches. So I think it is really interesting. Now I'm coming back with a bronze in a vertical, same technique, same dry brush right out of the tube, and just adding some vertical swooshes. Is that how you would say that? Swooshes across my page as well. More and more texture, just to create a really interesting background that I'm going to use. This is a shimmer spray that I picked up recently at the Stamp and Scrapbook Expo from a company called Arteza, and it is a very, very faint gold shimmer spray, and it added just a nice touch over the top. Now I'm going to take these stamps from, let's see, were those Dina Wakley? Dilutions? I think they were Dilutions. And I'm adding them in a distress oxide. I decided to go with gray because I didn't want them to stand out too much. Again, I'm just creating a background. And I went with numbers because I know I'm going to do something with numbers as the title is what I'm thinking. The number motif was just in my head as I was working. So I grabbed this number one, I'm stamping it around, again, working with the background. And here's where I start to tone things down. I have this large stencil. This is a masking stencil. I'm spraying some pixie spray on it so that it will stick in place. And I'm going to fiddle around, but I decided to put it kind of off center on my spread right here. And I'm going to come in with that same gray Distress Oxide ink and blend around the stencil, blend over the stencil using my mini ink blending tool. I love how the paint, when I do this, the paint still comes through. It's not completely, the ink isn't completely opaque. The paint has enough staying power. It's opaque enough that it does come through, but it is toned down quite a bit. So you'll see me blending through this part. I had actually anticipated that I would be using white paint, but it just didn't work out. It was just too messy, and I'm not patient enough to go slow with white paint over the top of stencils and such to get a good line. So I switched to using the Distress Oxide ink, and again, you see how it's kind of toning down the color, and I add layer upon layer. You have to be patient. This did take a while, but I am really pleased with how the end result came out. Okay, this is the magical moment where you get to pick up the stencil. I am loving the pixie spray that I've been using for these masking stencils. It keeps it in place. I get a really crisp line, and I like that the butterfly is kind of faintly coming through. A lot of the color has been toned down. It might look a little muddy here on the camera, but in person you can still see some vibrant color, just toned down a bit. I'm going to use the same technique over here on the right side of the page using a floral stencil that I picked up at the Stamp and Scrapbook Expo. Same idea, spraying it with pixie spray, laying it down, and using the same Distress Oxide ink. And afterwards, you'll see the beautiful florals come through on the page. at this. This was late at night and I never intended for it to take as long as it did, but as I got into this art journal page, I was just falling more and more in love with all the layers and the colors that I was working with. So I decided to pick up yet another stencil. This would be stencil number 3 to add some more layers to my page. And this time I'm using the white gouache paint, and straight out of the tube, actually, I end up putting it over here because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna use a lot of it. And a different brush, a dry brush, again, not adding any water because I'm wanting it to be more opaque. And I'm adding in some larger numbers. If you remember, I used the number stamp in the background, and now I'm adding some more larger numbers. And I just tend to have numbers on the brain. I have 5-year-old twins that happen to be obsessed with numbers, and they talk about numbers and math all day long, all the way up to millions and millions and thousands and all the numbers. And so even at night when I'm kind of unwinding, I still have numbers on the brain. So you'll see me, I'm going to add some of this stencil throughout here on the right side, and then come back and bring that same motif over to the left side of the page to kind of create a cohesive look and just to continue that number feel around this whole large art journal spread. Do you all find that things that happen during your day just end up coming in on your art journal spreads? I just couldn't get numbers off my brain, and it was coming out in my art journal spread. And I found that especially if I'm working at night. I don't normally work at night because sometimes I'm just so exhausted from kiddos all day that I don't have anything left. But on this particular night, I really wanted to play with these new supplies, and I think it's just funny the things that come out. I also think it's funny how energized I get as I start working. I'd planned just to swatch and just to kind of see what these new paints are about, and then 2.5 hours later I had a new art journal page. So it's just crazy how those things work. Here I have a cutout from Flow magazine of an artist that they featured, and I just loved the shape, and I put her right there as if those butterfly wings were hers. And I like how she looks very contemplative, like she's thinking, looking at her coffee, and behind her is all of this amazing stuff. And I kind of imagined that all of the butterfly wings and the numbers and the florals were like coming from her. They were radiating from inside her, even though she looked kind of, I don't know, retrospective maybe. So I outlined the butterfly to make it stand out just a little bit more, to pop out, and then I'm going to add my title, and I decided to go with the title Here We Grow. And I'm using some stamps from Echo Park, and I thought StazOn ink was going to be the ink that would work best over these gouache, but I think my StazOn pad is drying out. So I ended up grabbing VersaFine, which wasn't the best because it took a really long time to dry. StazOn is designed for going on a lot of different surfaces, and I thought with all of this paint on there, StazOn would work, but again, that pad was dried up. So I used VersaFine, and it did work. I just had to be really careful not to smudge it, and then I ended up leaving my art journal out overnight for it to dry completely. I'm grabbing my Tim Holtz small, let's see, this is the small chat, and pulling out a few different phrases like use your wings, and just some inspirational phrases. Again, I kind of pictured this artist, this girl that was featured, having all of this inside her, and I love imagining that because I truly believe all of us have creativity inside of us. We have amazing things and beautiful things to share with the world, and sometimes we just have to be able to let it out. I loved the black words phrases on here, but I decided I needed a little bit more black, so I pulled out this Jane Davenport set, and again I'm using that same VersaFine Onyx Black ink and adding a little bit of a border over here. This is Jane's mandala set, and it has just some cool patterns. So I'm adding a border over here, and then you'll see me add it to the bottom right and the upper left to complete this page. I had so much fun working with these Arteza products. It's awesome to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, and the price point on these makes it possible for me to try different things. I have some links to the products below. They are affiliate links, so if you use them, I get a small little bit, but it doesn't affect your price at all. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. I hope you have a fantastic day, and as always, keep it creative.